Long days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof Media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. I am your host, Constant Reader Scott Daly, now with karate chopping aura action.
And I'm King Newbie Matt Freeman, and I'm going to use my aura to finger blast ya.
Oh, Jesus Christ. This week on the show, Part 2 of Insomnia, The Secret City begins as we discuss chapters 11 through 13. Ralph recruits a new member to Team Insomnia, and they shoot some aura blasts at Doctor Number 3. Matt, what did you think of this week's reading?
Oh, this is just great. We're going completely weird. We're going like drawing of the 3 levels of like, you know, suddenly there's finger blasting. There's
just gonna keep saying
I'm gonna say it as many times as possible today. There's creepy Doctor Number 3 and his whole thing. We really kicked it off this week, didn't we? Like, it's been such a slow meditative story, and then we just go straight into like my favorite aspects of King's weirdness today.
Yeah, I was, while I was preparing the notes, I was kind of shocked at just how much happens this week. Like, we moved into a new section of the novel. If there's this novel is divided into 3 parts, and we're now in part 2, and it feels like we've definitely moved into a new act of the story, and the things are accelerating. A lot of stuff goes down this week, and it's a lot of fun stuff. I think, you were we talked last week about how you were kind of waiting for the quartet to show up, and it wasn't. And the interaction with Bill kind of made you think that things were going to be a little bit different this time around. And then bam, the section starts, and here's Lois with the same power and the same issues and all this same stuff happening. And that's kind of, you see how our lone isolated man has become part of a team now.
Yeah, right. And of course, in good storytelling fashion, he had to encounter obstacles and frustrations on the way to this point.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of fun stuff here. There's a lot of stuff that when I think about Insomnia, I think the Lois shooting, pills of blue aura out of her fingers is one of the things I think about, because it's one of the things I think about where I'm like, maybe this is why they haven't adapted this to a movie yet, because it's just like, that's a hard sell, I think. The thing that, and maybe when we get there in the actual reading, we'll talk about that. The thing that I find so impressive about it is you just kind of roll with it. It's nuts. It's really nuts when you just step back and look at it, but you're just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to imagine how this would look in a movie, and it sort of is like inescapably corny.
Just just an old ass man like karate chopping and like sending a sonic boom of energy. It's just silly.
Yeah, right. But in context of the scene, it doesn't come off as silly. Like, that's kind of the magic of King, is he can convey the weight of what's happening to the characters, regardless of what you would be seeing if you were looking at it with your eyes.
Totally. Yeah. All right. So we'll get into the actual discussion of this chapter in just a bit. Before we do that, though, Matt, we do have some quick announcements. It's a busy week here at Doof Media, and we got a lot going on. So just updating up on some quick things. First, the first round of our voting for the Do the King Thing short fiction contest is over. Thank you to everyone who participated, both sending in stories and to our patrons who voted in that. We are still kind of running the stuff in the background. We need to compile our list of stories that are advancing to our second round, to our playoff round. So that should be starting soon. It might be by the time this episode comes out. I'm not sure. Am I overpromising on this, Matt? I actually don't know what we have left to do.
I think that could probably happen. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if you are a patron, hopefully you'll see the announcement for the second round really soon, and get to vote to declare our winner. And then, as we discussed when we announced the contest, Matt and I guess Matt or I will be reading the winning stories on a special episode of Kingslingers right here in this pod. So we'll read those stories out and congratulate those winners.
Yeah, can't wait.
What else we got going on this week, Matt?
Well, we have another one of our Other Levels of the Tower Patreon exclusive bonus podcast episodes. This time we covered the 2013 adaptation of Carrie.
Yeah, we recorded this episode yesterday, and it'll be out by the time you're listening to this. And I'm happy with how that turned out. I really wasn't, going into this movie I was like, I don't know. I don't like this movie very much. I don't know how interesting of a conversation this is going to be, but I thought we had a lot to say about both this adaptation, about the De Palma original, and about King and his story. And I really, really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, I think it turned into more of a conversation about sort of the ideas behind the story of Carrie, which, you know, and to what degree the different adaptations focused on different ideas. But I agree. It was a surprisingly good conversation for what was basically the third time we've talked about Carrie.
Yeah. And we both said the phrase door vagina at least a half a dozen times.
That's right. That's right.
So if you want to know why, you'll have to tune in to our Other Levels of the Tower episode, which is available now, exclusive to our patrons. Thank you to everyone who continues to support us, and hopefully you guys enjoy that episode. And lastly, we got a special night coming up here this week, Matt. On Friday at 9:30 Central Standard Time, 9:30 p.m., we're going to be doing our monthly Doof and Chill session. This is our like a live stream we do every month for our patrons, where we just kind of hang out, play games, do whatever. We're going to do it public this time, though. We're going to do it for everyone because we're trying out the Twitch Watch Party feature, which is like a thing where, because Twitch is owned by Amazon, you can connect your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and watch Amazon Prime stuff via Twitch, like in a group. So we're going to be doing that, and we're going to watch the first 2 episodes of the animated superhero show Invincible. It fits with our Doof Media brand of looking at deconstructions of superhero stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're at all interested in doing that with us, all you have to do is log into Twitch and connect your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account, and then show up at 9:30 on our Twitch account on Friday and watch along with us. And I think it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, I think so too. I've never done this before, but it sounds like a very cool idea.
Yeah, I will be hopefully doing a trial run during the week to make sure everything's set up. So hopefully it will be no bugs, but we hope some of you folks at least decide to join us, because I think it's gonna be a good time. We're gonna sit there, we're gonna watch the episodes, and then we're gonna talk about the episodes. And this is a show that I've watched already. You haven't seen it, Matt, so this is gonna be a first time experience for you.
Yeah, I've seen the first episode.
Oh, you have?
But,
I don't.
Not the second. So.
I didn't know that.
That's okay. It'll be fun. It'll be fun I think we're gonna have some people who haven't seen it, and I just want to reiterate. Scott did just say this, but just reiterate: this is not just for patrons. This one is open. Yeah,
Yep. All right, that's going to do it for our announcement for the week. Let's get into the episode. We're beginning a new part, Matt. We're beginning part 2, The Secret City, and that means we've got a new quote. This one is from King's old favorite, Mr. T.S. Eliot, and he says in this quote, "Old men ought to be explorers." And I think this is pretty fitting for what happens in this week's reading, Matt, because this really is the moment where Ralph begins to explore his new powers and explore this new world he kind of inhabits whenever the colors come on. But like I said, we should recognize our old friend T.S. Eliot from his time influencing the Dark Towers series, The Wastelands being a book written based on his poem there. I think King is having some fun here, though, Matt, because the 4 quartets, which is the collection of poems that this quote comes from, is a thing that was intentionally structured by Eliot to be similar to The Wasteland. So I think King is kind of winking at us a little bit here.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, that's fascinating. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. The line itself, "Old men ought to be explorers," comes from the second poem of the quartet, which is titled East Coker. This is a poem, fittingly enough, about life and death and the interplay and interaction between those two things. Almost as if that's like a theme of this book or something.
Yeah, it might be. It's just as a parenthetical here at the beginning, it has been really interesting and I think valuable having this excuse to meditate on old age as a topic, as we have done as we've gone through this book, because it's a concept that I think that I at least have shied away from subconsciously in my life. Mm-hmm. It's funny because even when we were supposed to think of elderly characters last week for the discussion question, I was mentally just returning troll answers like Kratos and Baby Yoda. I don't want to think about the fact that someday I'm going to be physically feeble and all my friends are going to die and I'm going to die. Like it's fucking horrible, actually. And I kind of joke with myself about the topic. But actually it's a very uncomfortable topic. I even tell myself that they'll have longevity drugs by the time I'm old. And maybe that's actually true, but regardless of whether or not it's true, it's still a huge cope that I'm just telling myself so I don't have to think about this. So
Sure.
it's been, I think, actually valuable to read about this character who's struggling with these things, because it's a thing that I kind of avoid thinking about, and probably to my detriment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously something that's really on King's mind as well. I think, as we talked about, he's middle-aged when he's writing this novel. And so is this his version of midlife crisis? I think it's interesting because I think a lot of the 90s King's books are very much kind of midlife crisis Stephen King. I was listening to the Bag of Bones podcast that our friends over at the Losers Club did last week, which they described that as a kind of midlife crisis Stephen King book. But that was the part of the midlife crisis that is, man, I really just want to have sex with a 21-year-old. But this part of the midlife crisis is this serious meditative exploration of what it means to be old, and what that looks like, and how, like, Ralph, as you caught in the very first episode of the show, is a very introspective character who thinks he's thinking about these things a lot. And he doesn't always verbalize that he's thinking about them a lot, but you can always tell. This is a book that is constantly dealing with death and the inevitability of it, and the destruction of it, and the isolation of it, and what it feels like to be an old man. And yeah, I mean, I think King's looking at his life and saying, I'm closer to this than I'm not. And I want to figure out what that means to me before I get too much older. I wonder, like, this is really fascinating to think. Stephen King right now is in his early 70s, right? So he's Ralph's age right now. Right. And like, how fascinating would it be to be like, Stephen King, go back and read Insomnia and tell me what you think about your depiction of old age now that you are an old man. That would be a really fun God, I want to make that happen. But yeah, probably out of our league, but someone that has access to Stephen King should actually do that.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I can't help but think about the fact that a big part of Ralph's existence is the fact that he's lost his wife, and that's kind of inextricable. But I mean, I don't mean to be morbid about this, but like, when you're Stephen King's age, people who you love and cherish will start to pass away, around you, and so maybe he is feeling that same level of loss. And how would we know, right? Yeah,
one of the things I've noticed in the latest Stephen King novels, the last few he's released, is most of them have either a dedication or an afterword that is acknowledging a person very close and important to him that either has helped with his previous novels or is just a friend that has passed away, and he's dedicating them or acknowledging them in the acknowledgments. And that's just, I think that is indeed a part of aging. Like, I forget, I think I've heard this quote in several different places, but it's a quote around the idea that at some point in life, you reach an age where it stops giving you things and starts taking them away. And I think that is what's happening to Ralph for sure. Yeah. And that is mixed in with all this power stuff that's happening to him that he doesn't fully understand. And that I think, we're still kind of up in the air on how these two things are relating together. Exactly. Right. Very interesting. All right. You want to begin the chapter itself? Sure. So let's get into chapter 11. This chapter begins with King discussing the secret cities of Derry. One for the children, a secret world where the children move just outside the plane of vision of adults, but that's not the only one. We also have one for the old folks too, the old crocs, as Ralph describes them. And we get this paragraph here. Ralph had become aware of a second secret city, one that belonged to the old folks, around the time he retired. But he hadn't fully realized that he himself was a citizen until after Caroline's death. What he had discovered then was a submerged geography, eerily similar to the one he had known as a child, a place largely ignored by the hurry-to-work, hurry-to-play world which thumped and hustled all around it. The Derry of the old crocs overlapped yet a third secret city, the Derry of the damned, a terrible place inhabited mostly by winos, runaways, and lunatics who could not be kept locked up. It's a really cool idea. And I wanted to just kind of step back from it and say that it seems like King is defining three societies, which are distinct from, in some sense, outcast from mainline society. And these are children, the elderly, and the damned, which he defines as people with, life problems that are so serious that they can no longer function. Yeah. And I think this is a cool notion because, it seems like a lot of fictional characters and a lot of Stephen King characters in particular fit on one of these lists, if not more. I mean, just off the top of my head, Eddie Dean starts out as one of the damned. Sure. Jake is a child, right? Like the idea of
finding all this rich drama in these characters who are, cast out of mainstream society is fascinating. And I think this is something that King probably thinks a lot about, actually.
Yeah, I like that line of thinking a lot. I love the idea of this secret world that these people inhabit, because it's not even because they're hiding. Like the thing, like I love that he links old age to childhood in a lot of ways, right? Because you like, as a child, you're not doing anything for society yet, right? Like you're like this hurry to work, hurry to play world, which thumped and hustled all around him. As a kid, you're just kind of operating in your own world. And I think the interesting thing about childhood is I think kids generally are okay with that, right? They're fine living in that separate world because the world of adults doesn't interest them too much. But for the other two cities, for the damned and for the old people, it kind of feels like they are intentionally segregated away from society. These are people that are pushed out of the world that everyone else inhabits, because it's not like they want to, but you don't have anything to offer anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. They've been rejected from it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that ties into what, like the way they describe retirement and the difference between retirement and your real life, right? Like, I think one of Ralph's friends says, well, in my real life, I was a carpenter and fancy cabinet maker. Chapin had replied, exposing his remaining teeth in a wide grin. But all that ended almost 10 years ago, as if Ralph remembered thinking retirement was something like a vampire kiss, pulling those who survived into the world of the undead. And when you get right down to cases, was that really so far off the mark? It's really interesting, right? This idea of retirement as you leave that world, you leave the world that everyone else inhabits and move into your new world.
Yeah.
And then described as inevitable death. You know, my dad in the past year just retired, and he did it unexpectedly. He was an airline pilot, and when everything with COVID was happening, the airline was basically like, hey, here's a thing we're going to offer people because we're losing gobs of money because no one's flying on airplanes right now. Here's early retirement. You can retire early with full benefits. And my dad was like, yeah, okay, sure. So like he didn't get the countdown to, like, he didn't get this is my last flight. I know this is the last airplane I will ever fly. Like, he didn't get all these things. And so he just found himself in retirement, and it's been, I don't want to speak for my father, but it has been an adjustment for him. It is a different life. There's a feeling of usefulness when you are working and industrious in our culture that is gone once you stop, and you have to find your place in this new life.
Yeah. Right. I mean, King comparing it directly to being undead, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're like a vampire, or you're a different kind of being. You're no longer living the same life. You're part of an underworld now.
Yeah. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it's interesting to kind of relate this to what Ralph describes Rosalie the dog as post balloon string cut, right? Like, she gets surrounded with this death shroud, and he describes her as living on borrowed time. Mm-hmm. And this idea that, you know, she's still alive, but her death is coming. It's inevitable. And she's like in kind of an undeath. And I think that there is some relation there to what a retired person feels like sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, even the word is such a creepy euphemism. I mean, the word retired, it's like you've, like you say, you know, that that forklift down at the plant was retired, which means we got rid of it. We junked it. It's garbage now, right? It's like it's not. It does. I don't know. Like it seems like I never want to retire in that sense. You know, like that's. I'm not saying that I started Doof Media so that I could have a project to do in my retirement specifically. But like that is the way that I think about these projects, where I'm like, I have to be, I want to always have something I'm doing in the background that I just won't stop doing because it's fun, you know?
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of the thing that we're dealing with at large culturally, you know, like the baby boomer generation is not retiring. They're just not. And I think it's because of the same kind of extreme fear over what life after, like, having a purpose in work looks like. I know, like, I'm not even 40 yet, and I'm thinking about it. Like, Jesus, I don't know by the time we're old if there's going to be enough money that exists for me to retire. I'm just like, I'm assuming Social Security will be gone by then. I'm paying into something that I'm never going to get any of, and hopefully my retirement fund is enough to get me through. But
yeah,
I don't know, man.
It's fascinating. The generational thing is fascinating because my grandfather retired when he was like 50 or something.
Yeah,
like what would now be just an age that makes no sense unless you're doing one of these like fire early retirement things. But it was just back then, I think the attitude of the greatest generation post, Great Depression was just like, I just want to relax.
Yeah. I think being able to retire was seen as a status symbol. And now I think it's kind of gone to like working is your status symbol.
That's a great point.
I don't think that's a good thing. Like, it's interesting because I am like I've never in my life described myself as a workaholic, but I need to admit to myself that the amount of things I put on my plate make me seem like a workaholic, whether it's my day job or everything we do here or everything else, all the other responsibilities I take on in my life. So, but I'm not sure. I think we need to be okay finding purpose outside of work. And I think that is something that Ralph is struggling with in this story, like outside of work, outside of his relationship with his wife, who is now gone, like he's looking for purpose. And the interesting thing is the universe is kind of granting him that, right? It's giving him this power. It's allowing him to see a world that he hasn't been able to see before. And we don't know how all this is going to shake out yet, but there's trouble brewing, and Ralph has a window to it, like and in some ways.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we'll have to see how that goes. Yeah, I mean, I think one interesting thing about the framing, and one thing that I don't want to forget as we move forward, is the idea that it's not, and I think you hit upon this a minute ago, like it's not that Ralph is just self-segregating, it's that people treat old people differently, right? So there's this pressure coming from outside, from society, for him to just like hide away, and that is, part of the equation here, obviously.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think one of the interesting things about the book, though, is that at least up until these chapters, we haven't necessarily seen that societal pressure. Like we haven't seen it in action. Like Ralph has dealt with non-elderly so little that we haven't just seen like the societal pressure to push him off or shelve him off. We get that in a big way with Lois in this section. We get to see that, but it's interesting that we haven't yet. Like there has not been a scene where Ralph is treated in an ageist manner by someone, right? Like maybe I'm forgetting. I don't remember seeing a scene like that. No,
I think you're right. He seems to have relatively few connections to younger people, other than the baby and mom, Helen. Yeah. So there's not a lot of opportunity for that. And I think maybe that was just King just decided like, we're going to set that aside and show that via this other character. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the existence of what happens with Lois does not say that Ralph is just wrong in feeling like he's being segregated. It's that like the segregation that has been forced upon Ralph and the other elderly of the town has been so effective that we don't actually get to see society push back against him because it's succeeded with him already. Like there's no one to push back against when you're already, like if you're already in your corner, if you've been relegated to your old people corner and you just have given up and you just exist there, you're not going to encounter anyone that's going to push you back into that corner because you're hanging out there already. I mean, just to make perhaps a strained analogy, like, do you feel like you've been segregated out of the population of college kids? It's like, no. Well, I mean, we if you were to show up on a college campus, it would be weird. Yeah. And you would feel like this feeling of not belonging. And it's not like the college kids would be like, excuse me, sir, you have to leave. It's just like, you don't belong. They know that you're not one of them. And so you just kind of wander off, right? And like that's I think how probably elderly people feel in society at large to some degree. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I think that's one of the insidious things about segregation, right? That like when it's at its most effective, there's not even a moment for you to push back against it because you're segregated. Yeah. like that.
Speaking of being segregated from the rest of the world, Ralph heads to the park by the extension road. We've been here a few times before, but this is like the enclosed by trees park that is like the world. This is one of their secret cities that actually hilariously transitions to a secret city for the teens later at night when all the old folks go to bed. But for now, this is part of the old folks world, and they go to play games here, and we get this part right here. Games were what the picnic area was about, what most of the places in the dairy of the old Crocs were about. But Ralph thought the games were really just framework. What people actually came here for was to touch base, to report in, to confirm, if only to themselves, that they were still living some kind of life, real or otherwise. I love this idea, right? Like that you know, I think when I was younger, I always wondered like about old people like meeting up to just play these games, like to play chess or just like shuffleboard, like the old joke about shuffleboard and stuff like that. And it's like the game itself doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right. No, I've seen the same. I remember from my time volunteering at the nursing home, they would like meet up and play cards, and I'm just like, Granny, I didn't know you liked cards, and it's like she doesn't particularly. It's just what everyone's doing.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's so fascinating. Speaking of segregation, we've kind of like decided that certain games are like old people games, and it's just because they don't have the physical capability of doing things that like regular society calls an acceptable game. Like people meeting up to play basketball, like people like playing basketball, but it's the game, just like with old people, it's just about like having an excuse to hang out with people. Or like even video games now, like people play video games together, they play multiplayer games together. It's just an excuse to hang out with people.
Right.
And like these old folks are doing the same exact thing, but because it's a different kind of game, because it's not like a physical game in sports or something, it's like your shuffleboards, your cards, they're dubbed old people games. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, that is. I've never really thought about that either. I mean, this is just more evidence that King has actually put quite a lot of thought into like the existence of the old people universe, and may have even like done research on this. Yeah,
for sure. So Ralph is hanging out here and finds that the old Crocs are talking about what else, Matt? They're talking about Susan Day coming to Derry and once again having a debate around abortion. But then this interesting thing happens where the debate suddenly gets very, very heated between two of the old men, between a man named Faye Chapin and a man named Peterson. Faye is on the pro-choice side and Peterson is on the pro-life. This fight almost gets to blows. Like these old men like stand up and start fighting each other almost.
Yeah.
And I think this is a great illustration of how bad things are in Derry, right? If the debate around abortion has leaked out of the quote unquote normal world into the secret city of the old Crocs, like we can only imagine what it's like in that city proper, right?
Yeah, I thought this is such a great thing to include in this story because to me it spoke to why exactly this is such a explosive topic, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna I didn't fully understand this until I had a front row seat to the whole pregnancy and birth process myself. But it just is a fact that anything relating to babies seems to touch on any number of extremely sensitive, in many cases, literal life and death considerations that people struggle with in their own lives. I'm sure I've mentioned this on the show at some point, but maybe not. I don't know. Just the fact that my first child almost died in an umbilical cord accident and they had to do an emergency C-section at 31 weeks. And when they pulled her out, she looked like she was dead. And the cord was wrapped around her neck so tight that when they pulled it up over her head, it snapped like a rubber band. And it's like, Matt, why are you telling this story? It's like, this has nothing to do with abortion, obviously. But I'm bringing it up now because this is the story that like plays in my head every time anybody talks about abortion. It's inevitable, right? Like it is connected, right? It is maybe not obvious why it's connected, but it's like, I can't help but think about that when I think about terminating a fetus, right?
Sure.
And you can like disagree that makes any sense or whatever, but like, this is my point is, I totally understand like feeling intensely strong feelings and becoming a bit irrational anytime anything related to childbirth and pregnancy is implicated, because people just have such strong feelings about these topics for understandable reasons.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Peterson here is the reason he gets so upset is because his wife died of sepsis giving birth, right?
Right.
Which has nothing to do with abortion. Like even less than the story you just told. But it's all wrapped up in the same thing. It's all wrapped up in the same emotional core. And this is exactly why, not for everyone. I think there are some people that just like that maybe don't have this kind of emotional attachment. But I think a lot of people, when they're talking about abortion, these are the things that they're thinking about. And I think it's kind of ironic, in my opinion, that Peterson is actually inadvertently making a great pro-choice argument here, which is that pregnancy is extremely dangerous. And things can go wrong and you can die, and that no government or state should be able to regulate like your choice in that matter. But that doesn't matter. Like it's irrelevant because it's all wrapped up in this emotional core. And this, like, the same thing happened to Ralph, right? When Ralph was presented with abortion and gives his opinion to us, the reader, what does he say first? Me and my wife tried really hard to have kids and never could.
Yeah.
Which has nothing to do with the choice of abortion at all, but it's all wrapped up in this emotional core.
Yeah.
That is why this is such a contentious topic.
And I feel like just to make sure that we're kind of being, fair here, like the people who have had issues with unwanted pregnancies, I'm sure that's just as strong of feelings.
Oh yeah.
On that side of the ledger, and so just it's just such a raw nerve for so many people that it's just it's really understandable why this is such a flashpoint in society, I guess.
Yeah, and that can turn these two old men who have known each other for a very long time into almost punching each other in the face. Like the fascinating thing about this is Faye is like immediately apologetic as soon as he learns this information, because obviously he can see why a man would get so upset about this so quickly. But it doesn't matter, because like this is happening all over town. Like there are these kind of skirmishes all over town, and we have been told it's going to come to a head when Susan Day herself shows up.
Right. Yep.
It's just a mess. It's just a mess. Like you feel bad for everyone involved sometimes. Yeah,
absolutely.
So Ralph, for himself, actually, we didn't mention that he like jumped up to step into the fight and try to prevent it from happening, which I think is just another way to delightfully characterize Ralph as the guy who's going to jump up and step in. But while he's doing that, he gets talking with Faye and learns that an old friend of his named Jimmy Vandermeer has had a relapse from cancer, and this one is probably going to get him. He's probably not going to make it out of this one alive. I think this is really fascinating, Matt, because we've talked several times before that Ralph has been very kind of not cagey, but he just doesn't talk about his past life very often, his real life very often. And this is a big window into it. Like, because it turns out he and this Jimmy Vandermeer character, who he has never thought about at all in the entirety of the book up until now, were actually like really close. Like, listen to this. Listen to this story that he tells. They had also shared the lonely, unremarkable secrets of traveling men. Jimmy told Ralph about the whore who'd stolen his wallet in 1958 and how he'd lied to his wife about it, telling her that a hitchhiker had robbed him. Ralph told Jimmy about his realization at the age of 43 that he had become a terpene hydrate junkie, and about his painful, ultimately successful struggle to kick the habit. He had no more told Carolyn about his bizarre cough syrup addiction than Jimmy V has told his wife about his last B-girl. A lot of trips, a lot of changed tires, a lot of jokes about the traveling salesman and the farmer's beautiful daughter, a lot of late-night talks which had gone on until the small hours of the morning. Sometimes it was God they had talked about, sometimes the IRS. All in all, Jimmy Vandermeer had been a damned good pal. This is one of the closest relationships he's ever had in his life, right? Like, it's hard to imagine a person you tell all your secrets to, a person you stay up all night talking about God, the universe, and everything. How there's no relationship closer than that, really. And he's so casual about it.
Yeah. we haven't heard about this guy at any point
Mm-hmm.
in the story so far. I mean, we haven't heard about any. This is like the most information we learn about his pre Insomnia life.
Yeah.
In like the whole book in one paragraph. It's crazy. I mean, just the fact that he doesn't, just the fact that he's lost touch with this guy, and the guy, because the guy still lives in Derry, right?
Yeah.
Just the fact that he's just like, oh yeah, this is yet more like people off suffering by themselves needlessly.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it isn't to say that I want to be careful not to like say, Ralph, you were a shitty friend. I think there are times in your life where you just kind of fall out of friendships. It happens all the time. I had a guy I lived with all throughout college and then were roommates with for almost a decade up here in Dallas. I haven't talked to him in 4 years. It just sometimes happens, right?
Yeah.
But it is really interesting that like this, he's so casual about this relationship that seems very important. And like there's a line from Faye where he says, "I'm surprised you didn't know, Ralph. I'm surprised you didn't know that this man was dying again." And Ralph blames his insomnia here, but like, I don't know. I think it's just, everyone's in their own little world, like you said.
Yeah, right. That's I want to be sure, because we can be really hard on protagonists here at Doof Media.
No,
but that's not. I don't think that's what we're doing here. I don't think I'm singling out Ralph as like, oh, Ralph has been such a shitty friend. He's unnecessarily isolating himself. I think this is meant to say like, this is what happens to people as they get old and they feel like the people in their life are dying. I think that they pull away from each other and into themselves as almost a self-protective mechanism. And, maybe Ralph actually, he doesn't think about Jimmy Vandermeer, because to him, Jimmy Vandermeer was his dear pal back in his real life.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's in his afterlife, and it would sort of just be salt in the wound to go see Jimmy Vandermeer now, because we're all going to be dead soon anyway. I mean, like this is a terrible way of saying it, but like we know that Ralph's depressed.
Yeah.
Like he actually is. So he doesn't think it in those words, but that to me is at least like the psychological underpinning for why he wouldn't go see his friend.
Yeah. And maybe he will now. We don't know. Right. But I think you're right. It's just this. It's just kind of like when you read this, you're just kind of in shock. Like there's also this moment later that I didn't pull where he's like, Ralph, Faye asks him about him. He's like, he was just kind of, he was just a work buddy, nothing big. I don't know, man. There's very few people in my life I've stayed up all night till the small hours of the morning talking about God and the IRS to, that I wouldn't consider a pretty good friend. And even like, he has this, I think he has like the stereotypical masculine fear of emotion and showing like he cares too much here, which is so funny because it's in his internal narrative. Like there's no one to judge him for it but us. But like even his sentence, all in all, Jimmy Vandermeer had been a damned good pal. It's like you're just so afraid of like committing too much to how much that friendship meant to you.
That is funny. That is like, Greatest Generation guy speak for like a dear friend who I love.
My life friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's a man who jumped on a grenade to save me is a damn good pal or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really great. We also get this little bit of just like plot beat here where Ralph remembers in this moment talking to Faye that Ed was coming from the airport and wonders what the heck he was doing there and how he could have gotten past the fence. And we learn in this moment that one other thing that is in this airport area is a flight school. So Ed was perhaps learning how to fly an airplane.
Well, that seems ominous for
it does. Yeah.
For reasons that are difficult to pin down. But, yeah.
So on his way back into town, Ralph runs into the little dog Rosalie again. We're seeing a lot of this poor stray dog this week, Matt, and last week as well. She's staring at something across the street that Ralph can't see, and she seems scared to death. Ralph suspects he knows what she's seeing, and for the first time, we see Ralph manage to turn on his aura vision by himself. And we get this great quote. As she did, Ralph felt something turn over in his mind. It felt like the starter motor of a car. There was a brief but very clear sense of being suddenly lighter, and then brightness flooded into the day. So he controls it now, Matt. He's getting better.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's very we're moving forward. He's learning how to be a psychic.
Yeah, we need like a training montage now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I remember like last week you asked about the balloon string on Rosalie, and I was trying very hard to be very careful with what I said there, because I definitely remembered she had one, but I couldn't remember if we had known that at that time yet. But we hadn't seen it yet, but we do now. And the interesting thing about this, Matt, is that instead of coming out of the top of her head like it does for the humans, balloon string comes out of her muzzle. Out of the dog's nose.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. I should have guessed.
Dog's soul is in their nose.
I mean, it's obvious, right? It makes perfect sense. It is such a great King touch, because you can imagine any other author, if they somehow got this far in this particular rabbit hole of a story, they would just put the of course it comes out of the head, so this balloon string is going to come out of the dog's head too. But no, dogs' souls don't live in their head. They live in their snout.
Yep. So we see here that Doctor Number 3 is calling Rosalie across the street, and it's a really interesting moment, right? Where like she's scared to death of him, obviously, and yet his calls are working. Like she is going to inevitably cross the street. Like it's going to happen unless Ralph steps in. I also wanted to talk to you about the telepathic speech that occurs in the scene, because this is the first time this happens in the book, and I'm kind of curious how the audiobook handles it, because there are some distinct differences here in the way they each talk. Like, first of all the telepathic speech is bracketed, but Doc 3 and Ralph speak in the telepathic speech a little bit differently, because while they are both bracketed, King gives Ralph's a single quote mark, not the double quotes of dialogue, but single quotes within the bracket. And that's interesting, right? It's this little detail that's different. It's almost as if like Doc Number 3 is so used to speaking in this that there is no audible component to it. But for Ralph, there's just a little bit of an audible component to it, because his head is still learning how to do this thing.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't evident that it was like this from the audiobook, but the audiobook reader does it like normal dialogue, but with a sort of, when he does the assholey voice of Doc Number 3, it's always sort of like in a run-on fashion, it's almost like you're hearing his stream of consciousness, and you're just hearing snippets of his stream of consciousness.
Interesting.
Like it doesn't, because like when Ralph speaks, it's like that's an utterance, that's an intentional human sentence, and you're just kind of, but with Doc Number 3, you're just kind of hearing like his shitty thoughts.
I like that. That. I think that's because I mean, that's like one of the things I think about a lot is, first of all, I am of the opinion that like audiobooks are reading, they should be considered reading, and it's just as valuable of a way to absorb narrative as any other one. I actually think like sometimes it makes for a different experience. I love reading books and then listening to them, because you catch different things. Just the way your brain works, it processes that stuff a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I do think, like, I was thinking about how there's something really lost here in the differences in the way that King demonstrates their speech. But I mean, it sounds like they found a cool solution to that. I like this idea that, like, and I haven't listened to it, but also the Doc Number 3 doesn't need to take in breaths at all, because he's just like, there's no breathing involved in this kind of speech. So like by having it kind of run on like that, it also illustrates that you don't have to pause to, breathe in or anything.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's the way in which it feels like just to run on stream of consciousness, because like this bit here that you've pulled out, like the way the audiobook reader does it is very consistently like that, with no pauses, where it will be like, "Hey, you fucking flea suitcase, you think I've got all day? Get your ragged ass over here!" Like it's all the way through with no pauses, right? Which and it's I don't know. I fucking hate this guy.
Well, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Good job, audiobook reader guy. Yeah. So another thing in this interaction is Doc number 3 keeps calling Ralph short timer. What does this mean to you?
I mean, I think it just means he's old and thus his time is short.
Yeah, I mean, that is the most logical explanation.
I kind of jumped to that conclusion, but I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So Ralph can't help but intervene in the situation, just like he did with the 2 fighting old men earlier, and he calls Rosalie over to him. Doc number 3 threatens Ralph. He's not happy with this. He threatens not just Ralph, but his friends too. And Ralph's reaction to this threat is to karate chop a blue beam of light over to him, which misses, but scares the crap out of the Doc.
Uh-huh.
What, Matt? What?
I'm going to be honest. I wasn't all that surprised because this is just known to be within the suite of powers possessed by powerful psychics in the Dark Tower universe. Okay. I mean, not specifically karate chopping, but man, his name is on the tip of my tongue. You know how I mean. Brodigan, Ted Brodigan,
Ted, yeah.
Shot a psychic spear and killed a guy. So we know that that's a thing. I mean, for all we know, Lois can teleport like Shamey. We'll find out, I guess.
Sure. I guess in my mind, the psychic spear had no visual component, and I guess in this story, the only reason it has a visual component is because they're seeing the auras.
Yeah.
So I mean, no one would be able to see the guy, the little bald man anyway. But if you could see the little bald doctor and you could see Ralph, but you could not see the auras, and you would not see anything being passed to him. But,
I mean, my take on all this is if Ralph were to meet Ted Brodigan, or had seen that event, then Ralph would have seen it in full stereoscopic aura vision, and he would have seen some kind of projectile.
Okay.
Like that's because he's seeing the stuff that like everybody has. I don't know. I mean, I may be totally misunderstanding what King is intending to do here, but and maybe he kind of changed his mind about exactly how the psychic stuff in his story works. But I'm just sort of seeing this as one way of being psychic, of which it's all kind of the same thing.
Sure. No, I like that. Yeah. I like that. All right. So Doc number 3 in this moment also says some things that I won't repeat on the show because this is a family podcast, Matt. But the important thing, the family podcast with the explicit tag on every single one of our episodes. The important thing that we note here is that he sounds a lot like crazed airport Ed Deep Now sounded, right? So the message here is, oh, so this is where Ed Deep Now got the way he was talking from, and we don't know what that means necessarily, but we've kind of connected Ed to this doctor specifically.
Yeah, and that made me really interested to meet the other 2 doctors, the ones who seem like civilized blue collar workers, and not raving psychopaths. Which I'm sure means that they're just absolutely great dudes and probably going to be our friends.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, scissors so much better than a scalpel.
Yeah, and their smocks are clean and
they cleaned their smocks. Everybody knows that no bad guy ever wore clean clothes.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
So Ralph, his karate chop action does manage to scare away the doctor. He threatens to do it again, and although he says it's not loaded, whatever that means, he's got to he needs more energy. But it works enough to scare away the doctor, and he chases after Rosalie the dog, who runs away, and this leads Ralph right into Lois, who is crying her eyes out on the bench, and into our next chapter. Because we move right into chapter 12, which is basically the Lois chapter, right? This is we spend basically it's quite a few pages talking about Lois and everything that's been going on with her the entire time that we've been with Ralph. We begin this though with Ralph finding her looking raccoony with her makeup running because she's been crying so much. I just love that little detail. Like, you look a little smeared. He finds himself attracted to her despite all this, and despite remembering a time where she looked tired but beautiful, which is, I think, King kind of just, he's about to reveal that she's had insomnia, and he's remembering a time where she looks tired. And it's like, this has been happening the whole time, Ralph, and you just didn't notice it.
Right.
Yeah. So that is the big reveal of the moment, right? That Lois reveals to Ralph that he's not the only one around these parts with insomnia. And not just insomnia, though, Matt. It's the Ralph Roberts patented kind of insomnia, the waking earlier and earlier each month. It's the same kind of thing. So immediately we go, oh, it's the same kind of supernatural thing. And I'm wondering if you saw anything like this coming at all.
Well, not this specifically, but I mean, it fits perfectly with the theme that everybody's struggling with their own problems individually and not sharing what they're going through and not noticing what the others are going through. And in this case, she's struggling with exactly the same thing as him, and it would have been quite convenient if they could have talked about this months ago,
right?
But they don't want to share their weaknesses, and yeah.
I mean, it's such an interesting reveal that Lois's insomnia is actually like much further along than Ralph's, right? Like, this has been happening to her longer, because we learn that hers started a month or two before Carol died, where Ralph's started in the months following Carol's death. So she's down to sub 1 hour a night, but at this point,
right. Which interestingly, she still seems totally functional. Like, to the extent that he hasn't even really noticed, other than maybe once noticing she looked tired.
Yeah, definitely. I do like this bit, talking about how these people are like living and isolated and don't notice anything else. We learned that Lois has been, in her moments of wakefulness in the middle of the night, has been sitting in her house, looking out the window, watching Ralph sit in his chair, watching the town. And it's this adorable little connection between the two of them that he was totally unaware of.
Yeah, it's funny because the longer they talk, the more little hints she'll drop that reveal just how much she's been watching him.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, and there's moments here where like he'll think something like, oh, I hope I wasn't naked, or I hope she didn't see anything. And she'll respond, and the text will go like as if she knew what he was thinking. And it's a fun little game that they're playing, right? Because we know, or we realize by the end of this conversation, that Lois sees auras just like he does and has the same abilities he does. And so in that moment at the time, you're just like, oh, she's remarkably observant and can see him kind of shift uncomfortably, or can at least make a logical leap to what he's probably thinking about. But in reality, she probably just saw it in his aura and had this power where she knows exactly what he's thinking, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't actually pick up that particular one, but I think that is a big fun part of the of this chapter, is like you catch on to that, I think, before Ralph does. And so you're interpreting everything she's saying in a different light than Ralph is, up to a certain point. Then he figures it out.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so fun too, because especially to go back and reread the section, because you can kind of, as Lois is telling her story, you can kind of see the ways in which she's deflecting the supernatural parts of it that she's not comfortable talking about. And so there's a lot of like double layering going on here, where like she needs an excuse for something. We learn that she basically goes to Litchfield because Litchfield is her doctor too, and she goes to him for her insomnia, and we realize that he has immediately called up her son and her daughter-in-law, and with concern, breaking patient-client confidentiality, breaking HIPAA, where he loses freaking license, the asshole. But and there's this level of like, just because she's having trouble sleeping, really? Like, and of course, no, it's more than that. We know it's more than that, and it's really fascinating rereading this, watching the way Lois navigates this conversation, where she's still trying to hide things.
Yeah, right. I mean, you when you realize what's going on, and she comes off as, more cagey and resourceful, actually, because she was kind of balancing. She's obviously very emotionally distraught right now, but she's still kind of managing to keep the thing secret that she needs to keep secret. Although she doesn't, of course, know that Ralph has aura powers. So
yeah. So I mean, the interesting thing about this, though, is that it turns out that Ralph was just right about Litchfield, which, I mean, isn't that funny? We had moments earlier in the book where we were like, oh, Ralph, you're making the wrong decision not going to your doctor. It seems like the reckless, dangerous decision, Ralph. But this is the second beat where someone has told Ralph, hey, yeah, Litchfield sucks. Don't go to him. First, it was the pharmacist, and now Lois herself, who did exactly what he was putting off doing. and is paying the price for it. That's
Mm-hmm.
an interesting call, right? Like, because you think like sometimes you think that you can see the shape of what a book is doing, and it's like, we're supposed to be worried about Ralph because he's not doing the rational thing because of his petty grievance against this doctor. But no,
Yeah.
actually, good call, Ralph.
Right. I'm not altogether so surprised that Litchfield keeps coming up in the story, because his name was in the first sentence of the novel. And that is always to me a sign that it's going to be something where it matters more than just like, it's just it's just this side character. I'm not saying he's going to like turn out to be the secret villain at the heart of the whole story, although that might happen. But, but like the fact that it's like, oh, he's also her doctor. And weirdly, everyone in this town acts like just going to get a second opinion or finding a new general practitioner is impossible. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the area is smaller than I'm imagining, but pretty sure if I didn't like my doctor, I would just go to a different doctor. I'm probably missing something here.
No, I mean, I think I don't know. I think Litchfield is his doctor, and I think there's a lot of attachment to your particular doctor. The thing. I don't know. The thing I find really interesting about it, though, is that we learn here that Ralph's, I don't want to say irrational because it actually seems more and more rational, but his fear that Litchfield misdiagnosed Carolyn and that's why she died is a thing that he's been holding in the entire time. And he says here, I guess I just surprised to hear it from someone else that he might have misdiagnosed her. And Lois like says, it crossed all of our minds. Bill used to say he couldn't believe you didn't have the fumble-fingered bastard in district court the day after Carolyn's funeral. So like, it's really fascinating. It goes back to this theme that you've been talking about for a while now. The idea of Ralph on an island. He's alone in his insomnia. He's alone in his grief. He's alone in his feelings about Litchfield. He's alone in all these things that he's suffering. And we're finding out here that he is very much not, right? Like if the main idea of part one of the book was isolation and loneliness in that quote, right? That idea of old age is an island that we saw at the beginning of the part one of the book. Here at the beginning of part two, in the second chapter of part two, the book seems to be declaring almost immediately that no, that's wrong. That you just feel like you are alone. That here's another person who is thinking the exact same things you are, suffering from the exact same things you are, that you share everything with, and you just didn't realize it.
Yeah, right. It's almost like he's choosing to be alone. Although that verges on me being hard on him, when I think this is more just a statement about the way human beings are, and Ralph is a human being.
I mean, I think it'd be fair to say chooses, but it's not like it's a conscious choice that he's doing that. It's just, I think it's just how we behave. Yeah.
Because I mean, the thing is, we really can't blame Ralph, because it's not like his friends reached out to him either and told him like, hey, Ralph, like, hey, buddy, like Litchfield kind of fucked up, didn't he? Like we, do you need the number of a lawyer? Like, no, they apparently had this conversation about him behind his back. And like, I'm not ragging on them either. It's just like, it's just this pervasive cultural lack of communication, lack of reaching out to each other.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, because we saw in that conversation with Bill that Bill's like, Ralph, I know you've been depressed for a while, and Ralph has a bad reaction to that, but like, why is this the first time you're saying that to him? Like if you were legitimately concerned about your friend, why does it take until he comes to you about something that you finally say something about your concern for him? And this is just people. This is just the way people are.
Yeah. Right. There's also a very realistic kind of low key shittiness to the fact that like every time Lois and Ralph are together, they're criticizing McGovern. Every time McGovern and Ralph are together, McGovern will make some snide remark about Lois. But then whenever Lois and McGovern are together, apparently they're talking shit about Ralph. It's just like everybody's, which is such a human thing, right? Like,
I think it's so funny because, I mean, I think I'm forced to kind of reckon with this idea that I've just have the wrong idea of Bill McGovern. Like I was so much more sympathetic to him than the book seems to want you to be, because I mean the thing we see in this conversation is like this idea, like Lois says, silly old Lois, as Bill always says, don't look so surprised, Ralph. Of course I knew about that. Do you think I fell off a stump yesterday? And he's right. I am foolish. I am silly. But that doesn't mean I don't hurt just like anyone else when I'm taken advantage of. And it's like, that is a recurring beat of this whole thing, right? That like Lois is aware that they think she's silly. Ralph, through Lois's story, is kind of saying like, oh, how did I see this woman as silly? Why didn't I take this woman seriously? And I don't know. I just never saw it. Like I've just reckoning with the fact that I just misread Bill McGovern a lot. Like I never, like they build him up when Ralph is thinking about them and when they talk about him as such an antagonist of their friendship circle. And I just never saw him as that.
Yeah. I guess I'm still looking to see how this evolves, frankly. Like I don't know what role McGovern is going to play as things unwind, right? Like, is he going to acquit himself with dignity, or is he just going to kind of continue to be the way he has been thus far?
Sure.
And I'm very interested to see what King has in mind with this character.
I guess, I don't know. Did you like in the conversation between the two of them? I guess I just underplayed the level at which he was actually just being dismissive and mean about Lois. Like I just don't, when we, even on this reread, when I reread those sections, it didn't jump out to me like, oh, he's being a shit to Lois. I don't know. Like it really wasn't until they make such a big deal of hitting this drum over and over again in this chapter about how shitty Bill is to Lois and how he kind of roped Ralph into having the same opinion that it really hit me that like, oh yeah, I guess he is kind of shitty to her. But I need to go back and read those other sections and just see what I missed.
I mean, what's funny is that all of this just reminds me of like my high school friend group, which is like a bunch of people who were sort of being awful to each other, but mainly because we didn't know any better. And I don't know if King's doing that on purpose, like making these elderly people act like what I see as being teenagers on purpose.
Sure.
Or if that's just a coincidence. But
the secret city of children and the secret city of the old Crocs, like we're relating those two things again.
Maybe. I mean, they sort of are acting like teenagers in the sense that they're about to like start making eyes at each other, and Ralph is getting horny inappropriately. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
All right, so we've done the build up. Now let's get into Lois's story proper. So Lois starts her story, and it turns out that her son and daughter-in-law decided to make a surprise visit, and she's all excited about this. And it's just a random visit, just to come down and see you. But we quickly realize that that's not true. They want to put Lois in a home. They want to put Lois in a elderly home, elderly facility. And I think King is so good here, Matt. His writing is so good in the story because he manages to make her son, and especially her daughter-in-law, Jan, like just drip with this patronizing language. Like, you don't know these people from Adam, and you hate them immediately. You hate them. And I mean, this is partially because the story is being told from the perspective of Lois, who is angry. He just accomplishes this so quickly that you just hate Jan. You just hate Jan so much.
You hate Jan, and like you have a simultaneous sort of disappointment in and pity for her son.
Yeah. Who you feel like has been roped into this thing by his wife. Yeah.
Right. Like he seems to, I think it's the fact that Lois still sees her as still sees him as her baby boy, basically. Yeah. And feels bad about the fact that he's been put in this situation, but also she's furious at him for doing this to her, for putting her in this position. So, and he's just, he's weak, and his wife sucks, and it's a terrible situation.
She calls her Mother Lois. Isn't that what she, like, it's so patronizing. I hate it so much. I mean, especially since like Lois is 68, right? And maybe it's just because I'm a certain point in my life, but like, that's only 4 years older than my parents. Right. And so the idea of putting my parents in a home right now is just insane to me. Like, my parents are right now on they're in a hotel in Arizona, like living it up. They're having a great time. They're being safe. COVID's out, but like, they're just having a great time. And like, the idea of looking at those people and saying, no, you need to be in a nursing home. It's just insane to me. And so like, I can't imagine getting to that place. So that especially infuriates me, why you're treating this woman this way.
Right. Yeah, right. It's interesting because the whole story is told without us necessarily realizing that what they were told is like probably something along the lines of your mother is having florid hallucinations.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is a different thing to hear than your mother is having trouble sleeping.
right.
But not that it like excuses their approach. It makes it a little bit more complex than it first seems.
But that's such an interesting structural decision, right? Because King didn't have to do it that way. Like, he made us hate these people first, and then he offered an explanation that maybe kind of sheds a sympathetic light on what they're doing.
Right.
Because I agree, like, if a doctor called me up and said, Scott, your mother is hallucinating, like legitimately hallucinating. Like, she's convinced she's seeing things that aren't there. Oh, she also hasn't slept more than an hour in months. Like, yeah, I'm gonna react to that. And hopefully my reaction would not be, oh, you need to go to a nursing home. Hopefully my reaction would be, Mom, we got to get you some help.
Right. Need some kind of probably some medication at the very least. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but he didn't structure it that way. We get to see the whole story play out, and we see exactly from the way Lois feels and her perspective. I love this moment where her son tells her to put her coat on, and she says, I don't want to put my coat on, I told Harold, and I tried to sound the way I used to when he was only 10 and was always tracking mud into the kitchen, but my heart was beating so hard I couldn't hear it. I could hear it tapping in my voice. So like she's even like I don't want to put my coat on is such a thing like a toddler would say to their mother, right? Like put your coat on. I don't wanna. Yeah. Don't wanna. And it's just like it's heartbreaking because like they have forced her into a corner where she's being pushed out into that other world, right? That elderly world that is adjacent to the childhood world. That's
so interesting. I love how that keeps coming up. This idea that things that we think of as being childish or teenagerish are cropping up in this story about these elderly people. Like I mean, it's funny because Ralph often thinks things which are borderline like Holden Caulfield-esque, like nobody understands me. Nobody understands the suffering I'm going through, sort of like teenage mentality type thoughts. But of course everybody's capable of feeling that way. Yeah. But we do think of it as a more caricatured teenage way of thinking. But that's kind of how Ralph's been this whole book. And it's like it's only now really that he's realizing like, no, people can relate to your problems actually.
Some people can relate extremely specifically to your problems.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, regardless of the well-meaning nature of what Lois's child son is doing, it then takes a turn, right? Because when Lois refuses to go, her daughter-in-law comes out of the bathroom randomly asking where her special earrings they got her for Christmas are. And this is just gaslighting, right? They're trying to make her feel crazy. It's so interesting because I think if Lois this is a part of the story that doesn't actually make a lot of sense until you realize what's going on with the aura stuff. Because like, why isn't Lois asking more about like why Jan is asking her about her earrings for no reason? Like she comes back from the bathroom and it's like, oh, by the way, I want to see those earrings that we got you for Christmas. It's just so random. And like it makes Jan look stupid actually, because like, did you really think this was going to work? Like, but I think Lois is like being a little cagey here in that she didn't have to ask that question because she already knew the answer because she could see it in her aura type thing. Right. Like, so like, it's one of those moments where on first read, you're like, why aren't you pushing back on this more? It's so random. But it's just a whole gaslighting trip to make her think. So they spend the next 20 minutes looking around the house for the earrings and can't find them. And it's like, oh, Mother Lois, you can't even keep track of your earrings. It's such, fuck you, Jan.
Well, I also want to emphasize how sad this part is. Like, it really affected me. The audiobook reader did a really good job having like a quavery, sad voice. And like, I actually kept imagining like my mom in this role, basically, because it was like, I don't know, it was something about the scene, something that was put to me by the scene sort of framed it as like, I'm I'm the shitty son coming to put the mom in a nursing home, and my mom is the mom, and realizing how hurt my mom would be and confused, and like she would be mostly just hurt, not like she wouldn't be defensive, she wouldn't be angry.
Yeah.
The anger would probably come eventually, and the frustration, but at first it would just be like bewildered, like just like sadness and betrayal.
Yeah.
And that's mostly what Lois is in, I think, until, as you say, at a certain point she just realizes the truth, and then she's just furious.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that like the reason that she's not pushing back on Jan about the earrings is not necessarily because she reads it on her aura and knows what's going on, but just because she's been forced into this place where she's just not thinking straight anyway, because she's so put out and cornered, and she's feeling attacked from the person who's supposed to love her the most, her son, right? And so she's just like, it's just I could just you're right that you can just imagine like, oh, by the way, where are those earrings? And you're just like, my what?
Yeah,
they're in the tin.
Right.
Oh, well, look, can you show me?
I'm trying to process the fact that you guys are trying to ruin my life, but sure, I'll try to find the earrings. And
then they're not there, and you're just like, what? How can that be? That doesn't. Huh?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it just goes worse and worse and worse. I think you're right. This is a really affecting, heartbreaking scene, and regardless of any good intent that her son had, the worst possible way of handling something like this.
Yeah, right.
I really liked this part too, though. She began to cry again, and these tears made Ralph's head hurt. They were the deep, scouring sobs of someone who had been shamed to the deepest level of her being. Lois hid her face against his jacket. He tightened his arm around her. Lois, he thought. Our Lois. But no, he didn't like the sound of that anymore, if he ever had. My Lois, he thought. And at that instant, as if some greater power had approved, the day began to fill with light again. Sounds took on a new resonance. He looked down at his hands and Lois's entwined in her lap and saw a lovely blue-gray nimbus around them, the color of cigarette smoke. The auras had returned. This moment of him, like, he's like moving to, yeah, I want this. Yeah. I want her now.
I love the idea that the universe approves of this.
Yeah.
The white is looking down and smiling upon these two elderly people snuggling on a bench. It's great.
I wonder, like, I know the white is not like a literal thing that we personify. Like the all these stories have made it very clear. But I do wonder if you imagine the white as like a dude up on a cloud watching this all, or can we say just the reader? Like, do you ever think it's just like, oh, thank fucking Christ! Yeah. Like it's about time. I've been leading you down this path the whole time. Jesus, finally.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that if the white really is just like goodness, then it's like, yeah, this is a moment of unambiguous goodness that he's finally realized, and yeah.
But I mean, this is the thing I love about this, because you're right. Like, this is a moment like Lois feels like she's no longer alone. Ralph feels like he's no longer alone. They have each other, and they're bonding in their insomnia and the powers, but also just in having a companion again, having companionship again. But at the same time, they are being used, right? There is some force pushing them down this tunnel, as Ralph continues to describe it, this dark, scary tunnel, for some purpose that we don't know yet. And so it's kind of like this inherent, I'm not going to say contradiction, but there's two sides to this whole thing.
Tension, yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I agree. That is interesting.
Mm-hmm. And like we said, it is about this moment that Ralph realizes that Lois can see the auras too, that she knew Jan had taken and hid the earring because she could see it in her aura. And what's more is Ralph can too. There's like a transitive property going on here, right? Where he can read her aura and through her aura know what Jan was thinking in the moments that Jan took the earring, which is pretty fascinating, right? Like that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool to think about the fact that they can see each other's auras now, and then you realize that like he can sort of read her mind and she can sort of read his mind, and now he's not going to be able to hide the fact that he's attracted to her anyway.
Yeah.
and so like it makes sense that this is kind of the point where they just organically move into it, what is pretty clearly just like a romance, and they're both just like, yeah, okay, we're doing this now.
Yeah, and I think if you think about it, I think it was inevitable that there was going to have to be some other character with the aura power, because like if this is a book about how people can like fail to see the suffering around them, like especially within their closest friends, like you need it's one thing for one person to be able to look at their friend and know, oh, he's having a bad day, or oh, something's going on with her. You need for it to work, you need that kind of reciprocal relationship, right? So now you have these two people that literally are unable to suffer quietly and alone away from each other, because the other person will know. They'll just know, and they'll force them into at least a conversation about it.
Yeah, that's true. So now they have one other person, which, you know, they're back in the world. They're not islands anymore. They're tethered to someone.
Yeah. And they bond over the fact that they're not losing their minds.
Yep.
As they finish the conversation, they see Rosalie down the hill, and we see Doc number 3 approaching her, brandishing a rusty scalpel. Hey, speaking of that scalpel, Matt, we've seen this guy described much differently than the other two doctors, right? Here's another difference. His smock seems dirty. He's got sharp, spooky teeth. Instead of a nice pair of neat scissors, he's got this rusty scalpel. So, any idea what's going on with these bald guys, Matt? Any guesses?
I feel like this one is just the loser of the group, who like takes sadistic pleasure in doing this stuff, while the other ones are just kind of doing their job, cutting balloon strings like good centurions of the Crimson King and collecting their paycheck.
So they are performing the same service in your mind, just differently.
I think that they're doing it for some reason, whereas this guy is just doing it because he enjoys it.
Okay.
Like, I don't, just as my way of framing this might be, I don't think these guys would do this to a dog, because that's of no value to them. Like, they seem just organized, and like, you know, they went to her house specifically for a reason, and they accomplished their goal. Whereas this guy's just like, oh, there's a dog, I'm gonna fuck with the dog, I'm an asshole.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move into our final chapter of the evening, chapter number 13. And I think we start out with this Ralph has seen the doctor. And it's interesting because we know Lois can see the auras, the colors, just like Ralph can. But she can't see the little bald doctors for some reason, right? Which is interesting. She's had the insomnia longer than him. She's been able to see the auras longer than he has. But in this regard, he has developed something that she hasn't for some reason, and we don't really understand why.
Yeah, I don't really have. I did notice that her power seems to have developed slower than his, but I don't actually understand why.
But not for long, though, because with no thought about what he was doing or why, Ralph put his hands over Lois's eyes like someone playing Guess Who with a loved one. His fingers flashed a momentary white so bright it was almost blinding. Must be the white they're always talking about in the detergent commercials, he thought.
Yeah, sure. It's that white.
It's that white. Yeah, sure. It's not the overarching power of goodness that exists in this universe. No, it's just it's really solid laundry detergent.
I mean, I do feel like that is Mr. King turning and looking at us and winking. So
yes, yeah. very much so. Yeah. Whatever he did, though, Matt, it does allow Lois to see Doctor number 3. She can see the Doctor now as well. Fortunately, there's nothing they can do, because they just have to see there and witness the Doctor use his scalpel to cut poor Rosalie's balloon string. So sad.
Yeah,
so sad.
It is.
And I want to talk to you about this quote. And we've already kind of talked about the Doctor, so this might just be repeating some of the stuff you said, but I thought I'd ask anyway. This idea was followed by a thought too simple and gruesomely logical not to be believed. Not space aliens, not little bald doctors, but centurions. Ed Deepnow's centurions. They didn't look like the Roman soldiers you saw in tin pan epics like Spartacus and Ben-Hur, true, but they had to be centurions. Didn't they? Any thoughts on this, Matt?
Well, first, related to the idea that Lois can't see them at first, I see this as part of the idea that even if you have this power, you can't see what you don't want to see. which supports my theory that Ralph could have seen that his wife was dying, but he didn't want to see it, and thus she died, and that's why he feels guilty. That's bullet point 1. Bullet point 2, the doctors being centurions. That doesn't quite feel right to me for some reason. I can't put my finger on it. It feels too neat. I know I'm probably doing the paranoid thing, but to say that you have these supernatural creatures and they're the centurions, and Deep Nose specifically referenced the little bald doctors separately in a way that when he talked about them, it didn't make it seem like the centurions and the little bald doctors are the same things. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, in his mind, the centurions are just agents of the Crimson King, right? That is what we've been defined as centurions. So if this is the case, then all of these little bald docs are just working for the Crimson King, which, yeah, I mean, that's
believable. Yeah. Sure. I mean,
I think, you know, I'm trying not to spoil anything, but I do think one of the things that we've noted about King is when he wants things to be clear, he will make you know they're clear. And when he wants things to be ambiguous, he will make you know that you should be ambiguous about this. And this line ends with, didn't they?
Didn't they? Right. Yeah. I mean, I admit that's part of why I don't feel too sure about it. I do think a lot of the other reason is it's just that when Jesus Christ, I just said his name. I'm having a brain problem.
Who? Ed?
Ed. Yeah. Ed. When Ed talks about the centurions, he talks about them as being like, you know, vile monsters. And when he talks about the little bald doctors, he actually doesn't seem to think of them as bad. Mm-hmm. Like they at least my recollection, I might be mistaken, but he seems to think of them as like, you know, people who told him important things that he needed to know.
Yeah.
And so maybe, I mean, it's an interesting possibility. I guess I've been assuming that like all bad things are part of the same thing, but maybe the little bald doctors are in fact not Crimson King aligned at all. Like maybe they're just some kind of creature that lives in Derry and feeds on psychic energy from people. We know Derry is kind of a screwed up place. You know, this is a reference that like 4% of our readers will get, but like one of my first thoughts about these little bald doctors was actually that they're like the goblins in Pact, which is
no one's gonna know what you're talking about.
But like basically, I'll sort of explicate, like they're sort of creatures that feed upon and thereby exacerbate the shittiness of a place. Which is kind of what I see them as doing. Like they're running around hastening the deaths of the elderly and stray dogs and just like making the place worse. And I don't know. We don't know a lot about them, so I know I'm reaching, but it's fun to think about them.
No, yeah, I like it a lot. So the one thing we do know, though, is that Rosalie does not die when her balloon string is cut, but she is surrounded by what Ralph describes as a death bag, a black oozing aura that kind of wraps around her. He describes it as a poisonous placental sac. And this is, I want to ask you about this. So she's not dead, but Ralph says she's marked for death. He says later that she's living on borrowed time. So the question I have for you right now, in your best guess, what does this mean? What does cutting a balloon string do to a person or an animal in this case?
It's just a complete guess, but like maybe it removes their will to live or their connection to some greater life force that's keeping them alive, and so they just kind of waste away past that point. But I don't know. I don't really know. The phrase placental sac really jumped out to me as a resonance with, you know, the idea of abortion being a major plot element, because this is like an inverse birth. And I think this is something you may have kind of hinted at very obliquely in the past, but seems like as good a time as any to point out that if these creatures do feed on or somehow require the cutting of the balloon strings, then that begs the question, if a pregnant woman has a balloon string coming out of her belly or something like that, or like if an aborted fetus or live fetus or whatever has a balloon string, then maybe they can harvest those balloon strings, and like that could be a whole little side business of these guys. I know I'm throwing a lot out here. The last 15 minutes has just been a lot of scattershot guesses, but I do feel like we're going in kind of a direction like this, maybe.
Yeah, I like it. I think our listeners like it too. At least those that have read the book before and know whether you're spot on or way off.
Okay, fun.
So Ralph is unable to stop Doctor Number 3, but he just has this feeling that Lois can. And then Lois, well, she makes a gun out of her fingers and shoots bullets of aura at Doc 3. Remember when I told you this book was weird? Well, here you go. Here you go.
This is a very weird scene. So a couple of times during the scene, I was imagining like you know how sometimes you visualize a scene, and I was like visualizing this, and then I like semi involuntarily imagine like some person walking their dog, just like stopping and looking up and seeing these two people like gesturing wildly and shouting at a porta potty, leave that dog alone, and then like swinging their hands in chopping and shooting gestures, like looking really frightened and scream and then just it'd be great. It certainly would not help with the overall opinion on the elderly. That's for sure. Yeah, right. That's that makes sense too. Yeah.
I do really like this moment though, like where Ralph is like, he's desperately trying to connect everything that's happening and has happened in the book so far. Like we get this moment, he shook his head. His mind was whirling with jigsaw pieces, hats, docks, bugs, protest signs, dolls that exploded in splatters of fake blood that would not fit together. And for the time being, at least, the thing seemed to recur with the most occurrence was old Door's nonsense saying, "Done bun can't be undone." Ralph had an idea that was nothing but the truth.
Yeah. I finally have a guess what that's supposed to mean. Like so if you just like if you take it apart, like done bun can't be undone, as in if you put a bun in the oven, it can't be undone. You know, similar to such things as there's no such thing as a little bit pregnant, where it's just another one of these, you know, pregnancy and therefore abortion adjacent references. So that was it took me a minute, but I'm pretty sure that's at least part of the implication there.
I like that. That's really fun. I think it's really interesting though that like King is in this moment kind of acknowledging, hey, all this stuff doesn't quite link up yet. Like it doesn't all connect yet. But trust me, I know that. He's kind of lampshading it. I know that, and don't worry, it will. I'll get to it. Just you wait. You wait.
Yeah, this is one of the like hidden super skills of King is keeping track of your mental state as you're reading and having a really good, because that's one of the hardest things about writing for me. Like I love to write. It's a hobby of mine, but like this is a thing where I'm still at the stage where I feel like I have to show my writing to a few different people and get their feedback. Not feedback in the sense of like, is it good? Because it's like, that doesn't mean anything, but like specifically like when you read this, what is happening in your head? Yeah. like, are you aware of this connection? And often the answer is like, no, I wasn't thinking about that at all. And I'm like, okay, shit, I need to frame this in a way where that connection is more obvious, because, and then there's this tug of war between doing that and being like, well, if I make it too obvious, then I feel like I'm pandering and making things, you know, like boringly spelling it out for people. Right. And
yeah,
it's a hard balance to strike.
I think writers talk about this a lot because I think it is very difficult. I mean, I think we've talked with John McCrae Wildbow, you know, so many times throughout the years of reading his books and interacting with him directly in a lot of ways. And that is, you know, a recurring beat of his that like the moments after releasing a new chapter of his web serial is him going like, oh, wow, no one picked up on that.
Yeah.
And, oh, you picked, like, that's not, you really focusing on this thing, but you didn't pick up on this other thing I was doing. And I think that is kind of this constant tinkering of giving you just enough information. It's so, because what you're doing is basically like transporting your brain and how you see things into someone else's head, and via words, a notoriously difficult communication device to get your meaning across. And it's such a struggle, and any author that can successfully do it is like a god. And I think Stephen King is very, very good at that, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that John McCrae would say would just be like, at a certain point, you have to realize that a certain amount of your readers are not going to get a lot of things, and you have to calibrate and then move on. you can't keep explaining. It's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the struggle is like every person is going to read your book differently. And it's not that you have to write for each of them, but it's just that you have to acknowledge that each of those people are going to be coming to your book wanting something different, expecting something different. It's so complicated.
Yeah.
Storytelling is so complicated.
I think this is one of the ways, this is tangent, but I think this is one of the ways in which some people can be so like whatever the opposite of generous is when it comes to writing, because they'll just be like, oh, this author, he just does, he just belabored this point. And it's like, okay, well, like, yeah, you got it, but like, you don't know that most people got that, right? Like, you don't know that. This is just your take. And so like you can say, I found this really obvious and thus it was boring to me. But I think it's always a bit immature in my mind to like impugn the author's skill just because like you either got something easily or maybe didn't get something. Maybe other people got that thing. Maybe he intended it to be confusing. I don't know. I think people are over eager to say that authors lack skill or made a mistake when it's just like, hey, this is an almost impossible task.
Sure.
Relax.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you go back and listen to some of our early episodes of some of those, the Worm and Ward podcasts we did, I think there is some record of me falling into that trap sometimes where I'm like, this just seemed so obvious. I'm like, well, yeah, Scott, you're reading it very closely and talking about it for 2 hours a week. Nobody is reading the book like you are.
Yeah.
So maybe back off this seems so obvious and simple.
Yeah. He keeps hammering on this idea, and then like everyone in the fandom is like, what idea? What are we talking about?
Yeah, because I read like a normal human being, unlike you, Scott, who read like a crazy person. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. But there are, a few pieces that are fitting together, Matt, because our doctor number 3, we learn, likes souvenirs. He took Bill's hat, he took Rosalie's scarf, and there was a glint on his ear that Ralph picked up on when he was looking at him in the sun. A glint that he decides is Lois's missing earring that somehow jumped out of the pocket of Jan and into his ear. So what's going on there?
That's kind of cool. I mean, at first I thought maybe the daughter-in-law like actually like handed it to him, like, because she's like a literal monster. And then I was like, no, I don't actually think so. I think maybe he just kind of supernaturally collects lost things.
Yeah. Do you know, I think this is like the scary part about this implication though, is that like he took Rosalie's scarf when he cut Rosalie's balloon string, right? So like, have we looked at Bill's aura lately?
Yeah.
What if we get a look at this Jan woman's aura? What's that gonna look like?
Has she had her balloon string cut? Yeah, that's terrifying. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So they head back to Lois's place, and she makes Ralph dinner because they're dating now. And it's this wonderfully adorable old people dating scene that I just really, really enjoyed. The way they talk to each other. Like there's moments like, I think she says something to the effect of, you're not going to be one of those new agey men that like talks about their feelings, right? Because he wanted to help her wash the dishes after dinner. It's like, no, not me. I'm just well-trained. That's all. It's adorable. It's adorable.
It is. It's funny. I mean, it's kind of funny how that plays off of this idea that like kind of the reason why he's been in such trouble lately is that he refuses to talk about his feelings. But but maybe there's like a counterpoint here where it's like, when you have somebody who you just know is with you, you don't necessarily need to talk about your feelings. You just need to know that you're in this together. Yeah. And know that they understand. Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. I want to be clear here that I don't think the greatest generation idea of keep everything bottled up in and having feelings and opinions and things is not masculine. I think that's bad, and I think that's messed up a lot of people. But I do agree that in this instance, it's just kind of adorable old people things.
Yeah,
you know,
no, it's fun. It's a fun scene. It feels earned after a lot of frustration and struggle.
Mm-hmm. I really liked this thing too. Ralph gazed at her, startled. Had he once upon a time thought of Lois as transparent, gossipy, unable to keep a secret? No, I'm afraid it's a little worse than that, old buddy. You thought she was shallow. You saw her pretty much through Bill's eyes, as a matter of fact, as our Lois. No less, but not much more. I love this as like, once again, another beat of how terrible Bill McGovern is. And I'm like, damn, awful. But also, like, what we're learning here is actually Lois is a badass, and the strength she has at her to be suffering longer than than Ralph has at what he's going through, and just like been dealing with it and been living her life and carrying on.
Yeah. That's another way in which they're similar. I mean, and I don't think he's thought much about that aspect of her. I mean, we certainly haven't seen it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we also haven't mentioned lately. I mean, I think it's just because it's known and we haven't really thought about it that Lois is a widow as well.
Right.
They've both lost their person. And the timelines don't line up. I think Ralph or Lois's husband died a few years longer, has been gone longer.
Right.
But still, they are both suffering from grief, and like it's very much mirrors of each other.
Right. And she has a son, at least one child, that obviously doesn't have the best relationship. So yes, she is very much alone like him. Yes.
Mm-hmm. She has a son. Ralph's got Helen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh.
Yeah.
So after dinner, Ralph tells Lois basically everything, and since they're quartet, she just believes him. She just believes him. It's just great. It's great. So nice.
And she can probably like see that he's telling the truth as well.
Yeah. I think you're right.
I do like to imagine that this aura power is sort of like the magical psychic quartet powers that we see, throughout the other stories, except it's just being manifested visually in this case.
Sure.
But it's fundamentally the same thing.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
And then we conclude our chapter on this little bit of an ominous note here, Matt. Ralph gave a helpless shrug. What she was suggesting had crossed his mind, but once you go beyond it, the ground really started to slope away. Because if Dorrance had done that, it suggested that some entity, force, or being had known that Ralph would need help. Nor was that all. That force, or being, would also have to know that A, Ralph would be going out on Sunday afternoon, that B, the weather, quite nice up until then, would turn nasty enough to require a jacket, and C, which jacket he would wear. You were talking, in other words, about something that could foretell the future. The idea that he had been noticed by such a force frankly scared the hell out of him. He recognized that in the case of the aerosol can, at least, the intervention had probably saved his life, but it still scared the hell out of him. So I love this idea that, like, they just had this wonderful 2 chapters of bonding and realizing that there's this connection and this shared event that's happening to them. And then they kind of step back and go, oh, wait, this is actually much, 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 much bigger than us. And that is terrifying.
Yeah. Right. I don't want to be reductive, but it sort of feels like he has become aware of, Ka. This feels more like an agent, though, because Ka never. That's the one thing about Ka, is it rarely feels like an agent. It usually feels so impersonal. But this is like something literally kind of rearranging things in his favor.
I mean, something told Dorrance to go to his house and do the things that he did, right? Something ordered that to him. Right. We don't know what it was or how they did it. But yeah, that is a much more active role in the plot than Ka usually takes. Ka is just kind of the turns and twists of the story. Right.
And Ka usually doesn't have a person whose side it's on. But yeah, I mean, I hope they talk to Dorrance, because that would be the next thing that you would do if you were a detective.
So. Sure. But the chapter finishes up with Ralph telling Lois that when she leaves town for the night that's probably a good thing, and to call him right when she gets back into town, because now he's afraid, right? Because he's thinking about Doctor Number 3, and he's thinking about the threats that Doc Number 3 made, which is, I'll get you and all your friends. And two of those people Doc Number 3 has now collected souvenirs from, Lois and Bill.
Yeah.
Has anyone checked on Bill lately?
Yeah, let's go back and check on Bill. Take care of Bill.
Yeah. And that's how we leave the chapter, Matt. That's the end.
Yeah. It's going to turn out that Bill can fucking see oars too.
That would be ridiculous. Come on.
I doubt it.
All right. 3 very good chapters. I'm really, really enjoying this book. We have gotten to some of the parts that are a little bit more silly, but I just don't care. I really don't. Yeah,
right. I mean, I can't imagine being off put by the weirdness. It's just like, okay, like it's you're in for a fun ride. Like when you're on a ride at Disney World, are you looking at the animatronics and being like, that's fake? Like, no, you just
some people
I'm sure do, and I bless their hearts. All right.
All right, let's move into our discussion question for the week. Last week's question was
favorite creepy nursery rhyme.
Yeah, or favorite normal nursery rhyme made creepy by something or other.
That's right. All H84001 says, your question should have been to name a single nursery rhyme that's not creepy. They're all twisted tales of horrific bridge collapses, disfiguring plague symptoms, or babies being dropped from trees. Seriously, humans are fucking weird. Drop the cutesy song voice, pay attention to the lyrics, and suddenly you realize parents have basically been attempting to traumatize their children for centuries. I get it. Babies don't comprehend, and I'm sure there's some archaic, don't wander off into the woods alone type reason for them, but the tragic tale of an egg person falling down and being irrevocably broken is some fucked up shit to say to a baby.
Yeah, why do we do this? Why is this a commonality? Because I think they're right. Like, this is, but why?
I don't know. I don't even have a bullshit theory. It's I mean, even it's funny because I'm thinking about like the songs that I used to sing to my kids. I think Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is the only one that isn't horrifying, actually, that I can think of.
Yeah, well, you haven't seen the second verse where the star supernovas and wipes out the entire
sterilizes
galaxy.
That quadrant of I mean, it's funny because I was going to say I sing "You Are My Sunshine," but if you if you sing the entirety of "You Are My Sunshine," it is it's actually sad. So
yeah, you'll never know, dear, how much I love you. So please don't take my sunshine away.
Yeah, I forget the last verse right now, but it has a final verse that's just like, oh, and then she dies or whatever, right?
Yeah, the end.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, obviously we write sad songs all the time. Like not every single song is a sad song or a song about a plague or a song about a bridge falling down or a song about losing loved ones. Like, why all these kitties? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's kind of hard to write a happy song that isn't just like banal and forgettable, and maybe that's all it is.
Look, man, even Baby Shark is kind of creepy.
Yeah, it's a song about
what's the baby shark doing?
It's gonna get eaten. It's gonna get cannibalized by its entire extended family.
Yeah, daddy shark's gonna eat that baby shark.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think I don't know. Like, definitely, it's fun. It's fun to like. I don't think this is actually the reason, but exposing children to scary ideas, I think, is kind of good for their like mental immune system.
That's true. The world is pretty scary.
It's good for them to feel fear in a controlled, safe way.
Yeah,
is the truth. But
like a roller coaster,
or a song while they're trying to be put to sleep for some reason. Yeah, no,
I put my 6-month-old infant on a roller coaster and say, Matt told me to do this.
I told him, it'll be good for him, Scott. Yeah, I have no idea.
All right, up next we have Bricks, who has picked a nursery rhyme that is actually designed to be scary. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, better stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again. This is from Nightmare on Elm Street. This is the nursery rhyme that they sing about Freddy Krueger. Brick says, Nightmare on Elm Street is one of my guilty pleasures. There's some good movies, some bad, some goofy, and some that are just, huh? But having small girls doing this chant will forever haunt my dreams. Fun fact, I once woke up in the middle of this to my wife singing La 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 to the melody of Ring Around the Rosie in a high-pitched little girl voice. Didn't sleep anymore that night, that's for sure. Bricks, you don't have to feel guilty about liking Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street is great. There's so many good movies in that series. The first one's great. Dream Warriors is great. Look, Wes Craven's New Nightmare is actually amazing. Have I ever talked to you about Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Matt?
No.
So you remember Scream, right?
Sure.
Scream is a movie that is like meta about scary movies, like in a very specific kind of way. Well, like 2 years before that movie came out, Wes Craven was messing with meta fiction in a different way, in which he made a movie about the actors from Nightmare on Elm Street, where Freddy comes out of the movie and starts trying to kill them, the actor who played the main character in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Uh-huh.
It's crazy and it's fascinating.
That's incredibly fun sounding, actually.
Yeah, it's so good. I love this series. I love Wes Craven and I love the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
That's great. All right, next one from Pear Jane. Ooh, creepy nursery rhymes. My first thought was, of course, Freddy Krueger's jump rope chant.
Well, there it is again.
Yep. It kept me up as a terrified kid. I'd wake from a nightmare and be afraid to leave the room because a crucifix hung above my door. Thanks, Mom. 25 years later, if I ever tried to sing Buckle My Shoe with my own kids, I inevitably ended it with 9, 10, never sleep again. And I still can't remember what the original lyric is. In the Stephen King multiverse, though, the I'm a little teapot scene from Storm of the Century wins the prize. All the kids in the room get up at once, walk to the front of the room, stare at nothing, and begin singing and moving to I'm a Little Teapot. If anything, it's more creepy than children. Sorry, if anything is more creepy than children spontaneously singing a nursery rhyme in unison, I don't know about it. That's great.
Yeah, Storm of the Century is something we're going to have to cover eventually on Other Levels of the Tower, because it's just a screenplay he wrote that was made into a miniseries.
Oh.
So
that's fun.
And it's got my brother Tim Daly in it. So
wait, okay, you're kidding.
No, he's not.
Okay.
He's not.
So this is not related to nursery rhymes specifically, but it feels relevant that my daughter came home and started telling me about Bloody Mary, and I was and I it's been a complicated few hours, folks, because she's very concerned about Bloody Mary and very concerned about mirrors, and very concerned that no one in the family do the Bloody Mary ritual anywhere near a mirror in case Bloody Mary gets in our house. And I'm trying to explain all of the things that you would explain, but it's a fascinating thing that these kind of urban legend type things, much like the nursery rhymes in a way, they're like designed to kind of worm into your head where you're like, no, surely that's nonsense, especially if you're, a tiny child, but part of you believes it,
Yeah. I remember learning about Bloody Mary, and I remember knowing it was bullshit, and I remember still being afraid of doing it. Like, right. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And like the thing, like, where the fuck did she get that from? Like, that's the thing. These urban legends, how do they propagate? Like, obviously some other little kid heard it from someone else and then decided to tell her, right? But like, what's the source of that? Like,
well, yes, it's her friends, and in fact, one of them claims that they did the ritual, and then Bloody Mary appeared in the mirror.
Of course.
And it's like, okay, look, I'm sorry to tell you that your friend is lying to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a thing. That's a life lesson you're gonna have to learn, that these people that you trust and that you're really close with are just gonna lie to you. Right.
And when you're a kid, it's easier to believe that the supernatural murder demon is real than that your beloved friend is lying to you. Like, yeah. So
this is why creepy nursery rhymes exist. We've cracked it.
It's related to somehow. Yeah, sure.
I just want to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street again, because the most insidiously terrifying thing about Nightmare on Elm Street is Freddy can only get you in your dreams. but you can't stay awake forever.
Right.
And so like it's this inevitability that I think is just so wonderful. It's like you're gonna have to go to sleep eventually. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, unless you're Ralph Roberts.
Yeah. I mean, actually, the secret to beating Freddy is Ralph's insomnia.
Yeah, there you go.
So Complicated 9519 says all nursery rhymes are scary when being sung by children, but I'd have to say Mary Had a Little Lamb. I don't remember the name of the show, but it was some paranormal show that said it was based on true events, but it seemed really make-believe, so I never finished the episode. But in the first episode, these parents were saying how their 3 to 4 year old daughter was singing Mary Had a Little Lamb, which no one ever taught to her. They went on to say how the girl's bedroom used to be red and was painted over, but the red would bleed through every time like trails of blood. This whole thing gave me some bad vibes.
I love it.
That's creepy.
That's great. I basically don't believe in any of the supernatural stuff, but I love hearing about it because it makes me imagine that the world has this horrible demonic side to it, which is just fun to think about.
Also Complicated 9519, just tangentially to the question, mentions that the audiobook weirdly cut off at the end of part 1 before the actual end of part 1 for some reason, which didn't affect you at all, right, Matt?
Oh no, I didn't. I totally didn't have to sort of bluff my way through the end of last episode because I hadn't actually heard the very end. I had heard enough of the conversation between Ralph and Bill that I was on the same page as you, but there were a couple of moments where I was like, wait, what? and then realized that I hadn't heard the conclusion of their argument, actually. So. Yeah,
if you go back and listen to last week's episode, you can find a moment where Matt says, and yeah, the weirdest thing was the ending was just so abrupt. And while, I mean, I think you got kind of lucky because I think the ending of their conversation is rather abrupt because Ralph just storms off. That's not quite what you meant.
Right. No, it's more like he starts walking away from Bill. And then it ends. It's like, well, wait.
I don't know why they do these things, man. I don't understand. It's a book. It's written there. Just read it out loud and organize it the same way it's written.
Yeah. They do a really bad job at letting you know, like, when a section is ended, and they'll start playing the disruptive, like, section about to end music way before the end. And so that leads to some like confusion about where you are, you know.
So. Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah. All right. Next we have Donahoe 89 say, "It's raining, it's pouring, the old man is snoring. He went to bed and bumped his head and couldn't get up in the morning."
He fucking died.
He died. He's dead.
The old man is dead.
They say it was difficult picking my favorite creepy nursery rhyme, given that most of them are, especially if you dig into their origins. So I decided to go with the one that creeped me out the most as a child. I believe it was the most obvious allusion to the old man's death that disturbed me the most. As a result, this rhyme always made me lie down my head gently on the pillow at night for fear that if I bumped my head, I wouldn't be waking up in the morning. Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of like how I would avoid stepping on cracks, and then when I stepped on a crack, I would feel horrible.
Because for your poor mom,
my poor mom, broke her back. Yeah, and I'd be like, I don't think this is real, but I don't want to do an experiment that could result in breaking my mom's back. So
yeah, it's just be on the safe side and don't say Bloody Mary 5 times in the mirror.
Exactly.
Is it 5 times? Candyman's 3 times, I think, and Bloody Mary was 5. I can't keep.
I think the fun thing is like it probably evolves like a meme. So like I don't know if there even is a canonical version.
There should be a version that's like you have to say it 78 times.
Yeah,
which is like a lot, but when it happens,
yeah, right. But it's actually Bloody Mary does actually appear if you say it 78 times though. Like that's just the actual version though. Yeah.
So yeah, if you were fucking around with a kid and did it like 20 different times, you just didn't quite get up to the right number.
Oh wow.
Shortstop 88 says, "Took me a little bit to find a nursery rhyme that I remembered and fit the creepy vibe that already wasn't mentioned by you guys in the episode, but I think I found one, and it's one that we've already talked about. It's raining, it's pouring, serves my purpose just fine. This one is so short and has seemingly no plan for what it's about. that the first line relates not at all to rest of the song, except that it ends on the same rhyme as the other two lines. Yeah, what does it's raining and pouring have to do?
It's just setting a creepy atmosphere to know that this poor old man, he's about to get in. It's raining outside. It's raining heavily. He's sighing, looking out the window. It's dark, and he gets in bed and he smashes his head on something because it's dark, and falls to the ground in a pool of blood. And
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, as Shortstop is pointing out, this whole rhyme makes no sense.
No,
a man goes from a heavy sleep to being referring to bumping his head after going to bed, but not immediately after because he's snoring. So it's raining, it's pouring, the man is snoring, then he goes to bed and bumps his head. So obviously he went. When did he bump his head, Matt? When did he bump his head? I think he just had a brain aneurysm, and they don't know how to explain it.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And the raining and the pouring. I don't know. I don't know.
And then we have a euphemism for saying he's dead by rhyming mourning with snoring and pouring. There are quite a few ways of getting those words for rhyming without killing a man, but I guess the possibility of death while asleep was just too important that they decided to write the nursery rhyme this way. It's just ridiculous. I mean, like, I want to look into the past of this one, because it'd be so funny if, like, your uncle died last night and I can't think of the way to tell it to you, so I came up with this rhyme, and then just spread from there.
That's interesting. I don't know. I now that you point out all the oring rhymes, I'm reminded that, like, every word in The Raven by Poe is an or. That's why it sounds so cool. It's a very evil sounding sound, Mordor. Anyway, this is becoming quite silly. Baby Can You Dig Your Sam says, in the first Evil Dead movie, White-Eyed Linda creepily cackles a song to Ring Around the Rosie, and in the second movie, Henrietta sings the Mama's Gonna Buy You a Mockingbird song before she starts screaming, Swallow Your Soul. Sam Raimi knows creepy. And there's a terrible Ewan McGregor movie called Night Watch, where the serial killer murders sex workers to the tune of This Old Man, although I originally remember it as How Much Is That Doggy in the Window, which would have been even creepier. Still, I'd be remiss not to point out Willy Wonka's wondrous boat ride scene. Equal parts psychedelia and terror, that scene is always mesmerizing. Who is Willy Wonka anyway? A zany candy maker filled with magic and whimsy, or a macabre lunatic who thrills in taking out children one by one?
Yes.
If I only watched this scene, I'd go with the latter.
It's both.
It is both.
That is a creepy scene. That's just in the middle of that movie that you're like, what? Man, that's like, watch that movie again. That's a weird movie.
It is. It's
like there's an hour of movie before they get into the chocolate factory.
Yeah.
And it's like a musical.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It really takes its time to make you, I mean, I think it's pretty faithful to the tone, if not the exact story. But
yeah.
I like it.
And Charlie's uncle is actually just a lazy asshole. It's
yeah.
Like, oh, I'm bedridden. Everyone has to do stuff for a candy factory. Well, okay.
Yeah. He tries to tempt Charlie into being deceitful and almost losing the prize. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. This isn't a nursery rhyme, but the serial killer murderer reference reminded me of the movie Fallen, where you have the demon that jumps between people and is singing that "Time Is on My Side" song, and it's very creepy. It's not a nursery rhyme.
Is that a good movie?
I feel like it's not, but I also think I liked it. I think that I liked it. I mean, it's Denzel, and I think it has John Goodman, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So it's like you can do worse for sure.
And Donald Sutherland and James Gandolfini, apparently.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's a watchable movie. I haven't seen it in forever. Like I don't think of it as a movie that I want to watch. So it's a good horror movie then.
I remember liking the ending because it's got one of those unsatisfying endings.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, me too.
All right, last but not least, we have Luke V, who says, as the father of a pair of rowdy, almost 2-year-old twins, I spend a lot of my time listening to and singing along with nursery rhymes. The soundtrack of Super Simple Songs is always my number one playlist on Spotify, since the twins are constantly demanding it. As for my favorite, I would have to go with Ring Around the Rosie. We have all heard plenty of times of how it's a metaphor for the plague, but I've always imagined it as a foretelling of an inevitable nuclear holocaust, given the lyrics, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that thought.
Yes. They also go on to say, as for Scott and your brand new little one, if you ever get tired of the same old nursery rhymes, introduce your child to the songs from Bubble Guppies. No joke, those songs are almost all certified slappers.
Huh.
Have you heard of Bubble Guppies, Matt? I have not heard of
No,
this.
I don't think so. I'm going to Google this.
I am fortunately not at the phase yet where he's demanding certain songs. Like, we can just basically play music for him and he just loves it all. Although when I'm driving him to daycare, for whatever reason, the Toy Story soundtrack is the thing that calms him down if he starts crying in the car. You Got a Friend in Me, loves it. Loves it.
That's great.
It's funny, though, because I've been listening to Randy Newman a lot, because I've been every morning on the way to daycare. And it's wild to me that they had Randy Newman do the songs for Toy Story. It's like, here's a movie about toys for children. Who is going to do the music for it? It's Randy Newman. It's just, this is the things that pop in your head when you're listening to You've Got a Friend in Me for the 20th time in 7 days.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of when I would like come up with wild ass interpretations of like Frozen or the Santa Claus, because I had been forced to watch them like 40 times. And at a certain point, your brain just starts chewing on whatever's in front of it, and you think of weird things and you go crazy. Yeah, man,
I can't wait. I'm not there yet, but I know it's coming. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Bubble Guppies. I'm writing this down.
Yep. Cool.
All right, that does it for answers to last week's Succession question. Next week we got a good one for you, Matt. What is it?
What would your aura power projectile device be, and why?
So would it be a karate chop like Ralph? Would it be finger blasting like Lois? Or would it be something crazy? Matt, I want you to think about this and answer this next week too, because I'm really curious what yours would look like.
All right, man, I will.
I hope you folks have fun with this one. Just have fun with it. Don't think about it too hard. You know what? Just do the first thing that pops into your head.
Yeah.
All right, that is going to do it for us this week on Kingslingers. Next week, we continue part 2 of Insomnia. We'll be reading and discussing chapters 14 through 16.
All right. Remember, you can reach out to us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com or on Twitter at kingslingerspod. And the subreddit r/doofmedia is a great place to hang out, post memes, and answer the discussion question.
Yeah, and make sure you also follow us on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/doofmedia, because that's where we're going to be doing this Friday's Doof and Chill session, where we watch the first couple of episodes of Invincible.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm. If you are not already subscribed to Kingslingers, what are you waiting for? We're having a great time. We're halfway through Insomnia, and it's going wonderfully. Subscribe now. You can find us everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play. It's all those places.
Yeah, you could even subscribe to all of them and just like switch between them from day to day.
Yeah, but that would be weird. Why would you do that?
Yeah, and you'd have way too many notifications. It's a really bad idea. Don't do what I just suggested.
And it's like, oh, I think I've listened to this episode, but this app says I haven't, but maybe I listen. No, that's a terrible idea. No, please don't do that.
No, don't.
Wait, would that pattern download? No, do it. Do it.
Yeah, on all your devices, please. Thank you. Thank you. And if you'd like to support us in a way other than adding our show to all your devices, then please consider donating to patreon.com/doofmedia. This week's special thanks to new patrons Byron K, Amy, and Kincaid B. Welcome. We hope you enjoy other levels of the tower and any other cool stuff that we're doing. And we hope to see you at the Twitch thing on Friday.
Absolutely. But of course, if you cannot afford to donate to us right now, that is absolutely okay. You still get to hang out with us on Twitch on Friday. And there are still a bunch of ways to help us out. You can share this podcast in Stephen King groups. We just got a Facebook message just today from someone that said, I just started listening to your podcast. I found it through one of my Stephen King Facebook groups. So that means you folks out there are doing a good job. Thank you so much for that. We really do appreciate it. It really helps us grow. And we do want to grow. You can also help us grow by leaving us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting platform that has rating and review features, which isn't many of them these days. I think they're moving away from that, but as long as they're there, we will continue to ask for them.
Yes.
This week's Spotlight review comes from Quarter Bend, who gives us 5 stars and says, great companion to the Dark Tower. This was my second journey to the tower. I read all of the books along with the podcast, and it was amazing. There was so much I would have missed, even though this was the second read-through. The only issue is I want to read more King books, but I don't want to read them without this show. Well, Quarter Bend, we're working on it slowly, very slowly, but we got 1 down and 1 more coming.
Yeah. We're having a great time, though.
Yeah, such a great time. Thank you, everyone who are leaving those rating and reviews, and thank you, everyone who's listening and providing feedback and everything. We appreciate you all. We're having so much fun, and we hope you are too. But that's going to do it for us this week. We will see you back here next week as Insomnia continues forever. I just haven't slept in 5 weeks.
Oh my God.
I'm so tired. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.